Hey folks, it's Ben. I'm here with my 2002 Pontiac Grand Prix in my 3.4 degree Fahrenheit Quonset. So it's so cold on it, that means that we're doing an emergency repair. And that's what this video will be about. Although it'll actually be a complete video for what we're doing. So we're changing out the rear brakes. Let's come on down here. The original symptom included a brake light being on the dash. Now, there's one warning light to not avoid, it's the brake light. Come to find out, there are 3 sensors that control that light, pressure differential between front and rear, park brake being on, and low fluid level for this Grand Prix. Well, the park brake was fine, and as far as I could tell, the front rears were fine, so it ended up being low level. So I added some fluid, and eventually came back, lifted the back of the car up to make sure my park brake had released, and it had, but I noticed this sling mark here around the wheel. And my caliper's all wet, and even down here it's actually dripping fluid. So clearly what we've done is we've lost the brake seal in the caliper here. And as a side note, my brake pads are also worn. I'm gonna go ahead and link right now to the video of me changing these pads exactly, maybe 10 years ago. So I'm not gonna say they're due, but I am gonna say that we're just gonna change them. So we have our rear brakes on this Pontiac Grand Prix that we're gonna switch out. Let's go take a look at the gear we need to do that. I will admit, it's not cheap. So what we have here is we went to our local Napa, which happens to be Woody's Automotive here in Stettler, Alberta. We did purchase 2, these should be reman calipers. They're painted nice and black, which is interesting because I was going to paint them red, but we can skip that for now. Holy crap, it's cold. Whew. So we have new calipers for each side. I'm replacing the passenger side because if one's failed, who knows how far the other one is behind it. Maybe it never will, maybe tomorrow, we don't know. So just change them out and you'll be happy with that. Brakes are something you really don't want to mess with. You want them to, if you're gonna fix them right. Because if they fail on you, that's an accident waiting to happen if you're not expecting it. We also got ourselves some pads. So here we have our 4 brake pads that are going on our new calipers, and of course, new rotors. These rotors are fairly dimpled, but we'll do a old and nearby comparison when we get the components off. But let's go ahead and get to it. Car's already up on jack stands, obviously. So we're ready to roll. Technically, 3 bolts is all we're undoing today. Okay, so the 3 bolts that we have to undo, I'm gonna start with this hose right here. And this is a 7/16, which is odd for a metric car, since the upper and lower caliper bolts are actually 13 or 1/2 inch, I guess. But we're gonna undo this and lift it up and get it out of the way. It's full of brake fluid, and we get a new bolt and new gaskets, but we will need this square piece here as our connecting between the caliper and essentially the car. And then we have these 2 13 that hold the caliper on. Those are our 3 bolts really of the whole thing, so not too hard to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and do it. I pull this out and it's silver. That's anti-seize because I'm smart. Notice they didn't come out while driving the car, only when I needed them to. Smart idea. This comes out too. Oh, that contains our pads. Right on. So that's that part. And then for this side, it's been fairly loose. It should just wiggle off if I actually put it on frame. Can that stick to whatever metal's left on my... Yeah. Boom. So here we have the rear rotor, which honestly is not in bad shape. That being said, should fit my 94 Regal too, right? Oh, but look at that. I got a big groove there. The problem on gravel is that you'll pick up a rock and it will disintegrate, but it will also cut into your rotor as well. So there's a groove there. Call it a heat dissipation groove. And it's actually not that bad. I probably could have gotten away with keeping the same ones, but I think they're 50 bucks a piece. We'll keep them, but we won't. And then here's our... I wonder if that's even. I think that's top supposed to be hooked on something, but it's not anymore. Oh, that's maybe better. No, it's not. I remember now. There's a piston down here that expands and squishes it to the little inner drum here. I don't care. I don't use the park brake. And the bearing seems okay. Just the bearing by itself. Now I got an anti-seize on my fingers. Good job. Okay, so we're ready for installation on this side. I'll wipe this down, but let's go take a look at the broken one at the bench. My new preloaded caliper comes with all that stuff. The only ones you need to disconnect are down here, which in this case are these right here. So we're back down to just the 1/2 inch and the 7/16 on that guy there. Now on my old one, clearly it's wet and I'm getting my fingers all muddy or oily. But it must have failed on that seal there because it's been just dripping out. The stuff on this side is new. And this is where our square piece will sit, is right under this guy. So when we put it back together, we'll undo it. This should have I think this bolt has a hole in it. Yeah, it does. Oops, let's not lose those. You put one copper on each side, right? There's the hole, and then the center, it's a hollow bolt. That's how the brake fluid gets in. So you put one copper down, your square block, and then the other one on the other side, and these copper things get squished and they create a seal. So you put that on fairly tight and hopefully never undo it again. Then I'll show you how to bleed it after we do the other side as well. So yeah, the pads honestly aren't that bad. And they looked a little bit worse on the car. There's still a lot of material there compared to the new one. Well, halfway, maybe not even. They're rear brakes, so they don't do a lot of work to begin with, but look at the leak's the problem. So, and the rotor is probably fine as well compared to the new one, which is also going to suck the heat right out of my hands. Wow, that's cool. My park brake obviously has been doing something because that is smooth, and my rotor is not. So we didn't have any pulsing or anything like that, so we're okay. And I got contamination on it now, so that's cool. So all right, let's go put it back together again. Just these bolts. Let's put that in to keep the dirt from getting in it while we're got it floating around. But see, not that hard. I think you could probably do it at home. So for those of you asking, well, what about the park brake? I need to do something to my park brake. Okay, that's cool. It's essentially operated down here by this cylinder that will open up for park brake. Come on, you can focus on that. And close when you disconnect it or release it. This little cogwheel here, I can point to it with my light right there, is actually a mechanism that you can turn back or forth depending on the contact patch of your park brake. So if it's dragging, you'll want to shrink that cylinder a little bit so it doesn't. But if it's not catching enough, you can expand it out. And in theory, every time you put the brake, it adjusts it a little bit more. This one's been fairly neglected. I doubt it even adjusts anymore. Once again, I never use it. And being from the Rust Belt, I know that it's probably, the cables are, I would assume the cables are toast, but actually they're probably just fine. I can do this one-handed. There we go. There. So that's the rotor back on, and the drum just sits around it, and like I said, it mostly just pushes it outwards, and that locks the car. Brilliant design. I love it. GM, I wish you did more of it, because it is just great. You can tell it's okay by turning. Oops, and dropping your phone. But if you turn it and there's no real drag, you're okay. And in this case, there's very little drag. So that's exactly how I like my parking brakes. So we are good to go on that. Next, the slider pins, done. We just need these two guys there to bolt the new caliper mechanism in once we install the brake pads. I'm going to take two on this one since apparently I didn't hit record. With your brake pads, you get these little steel clips. And what their purpose is to actually kind of fills in the tolerance from the casting of the caliper. And you can see it's got the slot for the rotor that's through here, so the part that bridges is on the caliper side, that top side if you will. And what they do is that they essentially hold your brake pads in place and make up for any space there by using a little bit of spring action. You'll have two pads, obviously, one without and one with a squeaker. Now on this car, the squeaker was put on the forward rotating part of the wheel. I'm not sure it actually matters though, but it does need to be on the outside. So I'm going to take this inner pad and we're going to drop it in the hole. And first take, I was able to do this with one hand. Let's try it again. So that side's in, and you just kind of have to move the metal around a hair. There we go, and there's pad number 2. So we'll push that in as far as it will go. Then we'll take this guy and drop him in. Is that going to clear on that side? That's the question. That little squeaker? Maybe not. Yeah, it will, but it's got to go through. That's annoying as butt. Let me figure that out. Let's see. So if we come down through it first, mess with that. And then camera right in here because I gotta use both hands for a second. Yeah, that's as far as that one goes. So there's the squeaker. And then to essentially, we'll have to open the caliper a little bit to get our nice new shiny rotor there. And we can do that by pulling, I think. Oops, no, don't touch the pad. We should be able to open that caliper enough so that we can slip it on with the rotor. But that's next, so let's go do it. So that wasn't hard. You end up pushing it towards the caliper as much as you can, then moving this outward pad out as you can, and it just kind of shrink on there. So that's the thing we need to do, is line up our holes. Right here. Back up some so everyone can see. So you have your bolt, which is covered in anti-seize still. I'm going to lift up the caliper with my leg because I only have one hand until I can get that hole lined up. Oh, there we go. It pulls out a little bit. Get that thread started. Of course, the bolt is facing me, so it's going to actually be turning, seeming like I'm turning it the wrong way, but it's good. As soon as I get some engagement, I think I've got now, I'm safe to use a ratchet now that we're threaded in a little bit. But I'm going to use the bottom one now, which is down here. And very hard to see with the camera. Same idea, I probably have to lift the back of the caliper out a little bit. You can kind of see it there. And it's also now started, I can tell. I can't pull it out. It's slowly rotating in, so I'm going to get the ratchet, pound these puppies right down. Okay, so these are tight, like really tight. You want them to be tight. They hold the brakes on your car. So that's your stopping force. So now that we have our caliper on here with no fluid in it, you should be fairly free. And we got a little rubbing, but remember this rotor's still kind of floating around. So when we bolt it down, it should still be good, but looks like we've got enough opening that we're awesome. Bring our attention up to here. This is our connector. And you can see the copper means I've got one copper ring on that side, and that one, it looks like it has come off. It's ribbed for to get it. So I'm going to get a rag, and we'll pry that off, and we're going to clean that up. This is another one where you want to put it on fairly tight. You can see the copper on either side, maybe, in the video shot. I can't tell if you can for sure, but it's really on there tight. And when we bleed it, and here's our bleeder cover, we'll put a little tube on that and put it in some fluid, make sure we don't back suck any air back in. But when we get our assistant here, we'll be able to have her put pressure on the brakes, break the bleeder, have it out enough material, and eventually once we stop getting bubbles, we know we'll have this side done. We'll go to the other side. I'm gonna go warm my feet up, and then we'll come do a time lapse on the other side, and then we'll do bleeding. Welcome back. So we're here now at the brake reservoir, and brake fluid is traditionally supposed to be, and here's my cap, it's pulled out a little bit. I had filled this the other day, about 2 days ago, and it's already down a little bit, so we were starting to leak quite a bit. It was time to move along. Now the fluid in here is not going to be, it's supposed to be clear. DOT is fairly clear, and this is not. It has contamination, mostly due to moisture in the air. So what I'm going to do is, before I bleed the system, if we're going to be moving some fluid through here, we might as well put some fresh stuff. So I've got a dollar store turkey baster, and we're just going to come, draw some suction, suck that stuff out, and squirt it into a container, which we'll then use to bleed out our rear brake. So we have our fluid for that. And this. And see, it's kind of green. It's not that bad. It's not that good either. We're just going to grab as much as we can. Technically, my rear one, I believe, is that I'm sucking the most out of, so that's cool. But we're just going to suck it right down to nothing. And then we'll put fresh in. And it's going to refill from the front a little bit. But I can't get into the front part. It just has a little kind of kind of a bleed wall, so I can only do so much on that side. But hey, that's better than nothing. So with that sucked out, for the most part, I can now put some clean fluid in there. I'd like it for the protection of the fluid. So that is right full. Of course, the nose is down a little bit on this car because we've got the back jacked up, but that would be good for starters. Much, much clearer anyway. Just show you what's in there. The collection bin. White marshmallow fluff container, and see it's a dark green, not cool, versus practically clear. So that's cool. We'll put the cap back on because it's got this little dimple that'll actually suck out as we bleed it, but that'll keep crap out. That's done. Let's get this out for bleeding, and I think we're ready for our partner. So we'll get her out here to help pump us the brakes. Okay, so we're at the bleeding phase now. So I've got my partner, she's in the car now. She's gonna go ahead and pump the pedal 3 times and leave her foot on it, and I'll release this and we'll hopefully get some air out of it. You wanna pump it 3 times? Big chug of air out of that, some fluid. Awesome. Okay, can you do it again? A big chug of air. Awesome. Okay, do it again. Let me tighten this bleeder down so I can release it. And next we're going to go refill the reservoir because it's probably consumed quite a bit. And we'll go to the other side. So there we go. System bled, should be good to go. This is the type of wheel I would expect. A little bit of grinding, but fairly free turning. That's cool. The driver's side after bleeding, not so much. She's a little tight. So we're gonna take her for a test drive. Drag her wheel around a little bit. It is not as loose. It's quite tight actually. So it could, I can't do it with my bare hand, it's too cold, but it's a little tight. So I'll take it for a spin. If she doesn't free up, then we'll have to pop it open and kind of pry on things a little bit, but I think it'll be fine. So if you have any questions, I'll leave it to the outro. But that's how you do the rear brakes, calipers, and rotors on a 2002 Pontiac Grand Prix. Thanks for watching. Leave any questions or comments down below. And be sure to subscribe to my channel for awesome updates on what I'm doing. Please check out the next video I've got lined up for you. And also check out my Patreon page if you want to support what we're doing here. And finally, check out my other less tractory page, Red Barn Homestead. You can subscribe to that too. See some awesome stuff. And we'll see you next time.